Greetings, everyone. Chess by Jason here with another installment of my ongoing saga of chessery. Today, I want to look at an opening that has become very, very important for a lot of my students. For example, on Saturdays, I've been holding these weekly blitz events on Lee Chess for, roughly 20 participants each time. Um, and the opening that has been more common than every other opening by far has been the Four Knights. Now, this has never been one of my recommendations for white. I think white should go for a little bit more than this. Black probably doesn't have a choice but to go into it. Uh, I don't think this is the most ambitious setup for white. I think that at a certain level, maybe 14, 1500 or so, this is just like a really logical way to play chess, and it's not bad. Uh, I was surprised by the prevalence of it. Really, something like 40 to 50% of games start off in a position just about like this one, or at least something that will transpose into one of these positions where all four knights entered the game sort of immediately. And yeah, this is called the Four Knights. White has a couple of tries here. The move that I saw a lot of that I have to kind of wag my finger at a lot of my students is this move, bishop to c4. This is kind of a bad move. Like, it's not awful, but black has pretty simple equality with the relatively easy knight takes pawn. And yeah, this one is well known just to be equal for black, at least equal, I think, because if they take the piece, we of course regain the piece. And okay, white has a couple of different tries here, but we're getting the piece back in every line, and we're never really worse. Yeah, we're never worse here in any of the lines. So if you see this move, bishop to c4, yeah, just take it instantly. And yeah, I've actually played this a number of times myself in like higher level blitz games. I don't know if I've seen this from anyone higher than around 2200 or so in their blitz rating, but okay, so still a pretty serious player. I just don't think this is a good opening. I cannot imagine black suffering at all from this position. Even if they try to get kind of fancy with like bishop takes f7, this one doesn't work that well because, okay, their idea is they give up the bishop because they knew they were going to lose a piece anyway, so might as well weaken the black king. But in practice, it doesn't really work that well, and black has a pretty simple way to be just a big advantage. After knight takes, we play d5. So we've got the bishop pair, and we've got a massive center in exchange for our king being somewhat softened up. But white actually has another problem, is that their knights have a really hard time finding secure squares. If, for example, they play knight here check, king back, and the move d4, okay, with a little bit of accuracy, black's like close to winning here already, which is kind of funny because like our king got opened up and like white's gonna try to checkmate us, but it's probably losing. White's probably busted here after h6. Knight has to go back to h3, and I would love to take that knight, but I think it's even better just to play bishop b4 with this, or sorry, bishop g4 with this pin. Again, you could analyze this a bit on your own, but it's bad. White just has a bad position here everywhere. Yeah, especially in this line. This line is pretty wretched. So going all the way back. Okay, boys and girls. If they play bishop c4, take the pawn. You are at least equal everywhere. And that's all I have to say about this particular variation. Now, much, much more serious are, I think, two other options. Either bishop to b5, much better than bishop c4, just way better, or the move immediately d4. Now, in the case of d4, the main line is to take. The main line is to take, but I might advise or recommend the following sideline. Bishop to b4. It's probably not quite as good a move as taking, but in my experience, at least in blitz games, this one has served me really, really well, because I feel like most of my opponents have, again, misplayed it. There's a few possible moves here for white, either d5 at which point the knight probably goes back this way. And, well, if white doesn't know how to play it, then they end up like way worse. Like, let's say after d5, knight goes back. I think we have to play knight takes pawn. And it's kind of tricky, but like it's probably okay for both sides. A line I've seen in a lot of my own games, and this is like so bad, bishop to d3. And okay, I would consider this one somewhere in the realm of like strategically losing for white. I know that sounds kind of extreme, but the position I'm looking forward to playing, I'm just going to take right away. I'm going to give them these doubled pawns while I still can. Now I'm going to play d6, knight g7, knight g6. I'm going to castle, and I am going to try to orchestrate at some point the move f7 to f5. The reason I think this position is going to be so very good for black, and I mean this is an excellent position. 1, white cannot make any breaks on the queen side. The queen side is going to be totally static. If they try to push any pawns, like any of this to try to get any kind of pawn break, we are going to play the moves b6 and a5. White cannot create any kind of a meaningful pawn break. Just there's nothing there. So the center is going to be locked up. The queen side is going to be locked up after b6 to a5 if we need to play it. And our plan, knight g6, castles, I don't know, maybe h6, knight h7, f5, and just go for that sort of King's Indian style attack. Well, we know from 100 years of practice that sort of King's Indian attack formation that black is going for is really, really effective for delivering checkmates. And white's main sort of recourse when black is launching that sort of attack is they play on the queen side. But as previously discussed, white does not have any serious queen side threats. They don't have any pawn breaks. They can't open up any lines. So I think this is just going to lead to a position that is fundamentally excellent for black. We don't miss the bishop pair at all, and we just have really, really good chances. I would if I could start every chess game like this, I would choose black every single time, and I would go into this with very, very much optimism. Okay, going back. That is just one of the ways that I've seen this opening kind of misplayed. The main move is... Oh, another mistake is pawn takes pawn, because after knight takes, white has robbed themselves of their main source of activity here, which should be the move queen to g4. So this one, black's doing really well here. What white is supposed to play is knight takes pawn, and then, like I said, they have this cool move queen to g4. And this one is... Maybe white keeps a small plus. There's kind of a long forcing continuation that both sides kind of have to go to. I'll just run through that one really quick. Knight takes knight. And here, queen takes g7, threatening mate and threatening the rook. Of course, taking the knight would have got us nowhere because we just walk into a fork. Okay, there's really no good discoveries. If we move this knight anywhere, we're putting them in check, but c3 just... It's just not working, pretty much. Black has to play the move rook to f8. We had to defend that. We had to defend this. And here, really important little nuance for white, the move a3. If they don't play a3, then they will not be getting the most out of this opening, and in fact, it could end up just being pretty bad. It's very important to chase the bishop back to this a5 square for a couple of reasons. One, if it's on b4, it could be defended by knight here and then defending it. That's going to be important later. And also we want the bishop here because in the following line, knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, and queen e5 check, the main line and probably the only line that white could seriously go for. Okay, now it's check and they are hitting the bishop. So now we would have to play queen to e7, pinning the queen. The queens come off, and now white wants to regain their piece. Bishop to d2. That is a very nice pin. This knight does not have any squares to go to. Again, it's very important is that we push the bishop back to a5 so it's unprotected. Okay, so this is both sides playing it just about perfectly. Bishop f5. You could capture in either way, but let's look at bishop takes. Chop, chop. We take our pawn back. King d2, notice there's really no reason to castle here, and the king is much more active in the center of the board because it's the endgame. Bishop back, bishop d3, and after queen to d6, I think black is pretty close to getting that nice equality. If we could just play the move c6 to c5 and try to undouble our pawns. If black is worse here, it's by a pretty slim margin, and I don't necessarily think that this opening needs to be avoided. And again, it is a pretty big if our opponent is going to play it perfectly for white. I've only seen this a couple of times, and I go for this line whenever possible, and I've only actually seen this following position a handful of times in my games, because usually white would have misplayed it by now, and yeah, in any case here, I don't think that it's too terrifying. So going way back. So that was the move, not bishop c4. Okay, bishop c4, we chop this pawn. Pawn to d4, and I like this sideline. I really do like this line. I enjoy the positions I've been getting out of it. And it's at least okay for black. Now, bishop to b5. We haven't talked about this one yet. Okay, there are a bunch of choices for black. There is bishop to b4, just the copycat, but that's fine for black. Bishop to c5. This one actually gets pretty tricky because now it's white who tries a familiar tactic, and after we take, they go d4. This one is closer to okay for the black side than it was for the white side, because now at least black, at some point, I don't know when, we'll have the move c6 with the tempo. This one's kind of crazy, though. I think the line goes bishop back to d6, and then instead of even taking, they play the move like f4. And alright, this one gets kind of wild. I've never really played it for black because it looks sort of terrifying. Like, I know they're going to get the piece back, and it's going to be nuts, but I know this one is supposed to be okay for black, but I've never really looked at it, but it could be interesting. Bishop to d6 is an interesting move. It feels pretty unnatural to be blocking this pawn, which blocks in the bishop. The idea is that the majority of the time, in this kind of setup for white, they're going to take the knight eventually. Only in this case, we've sort of made taking the knight not very desirable, because if they do, they will be helping us to develop our bishop. So bishop to d6 is sort of interesting. I don't really understand it. I've looked at it a bit, and I know the line, like, we go like castles, rook e8, and then bishop back to f8. And while I do love returning the bishop to a starting square after castling, I still have never 1000% believed in this line, but it's supposed to be a very good one. The line that I would recommend, knight to d4. Now, the reason that I would advise this particular repertoire, I think it offers the very best chances of our opponent misplaying it. I think if we handle it this way for black, the move knight to d4, which I think is the second or third most played move, I really, really, really think it's unlikely that any player below maybe 2,000 or so strength, they're not going to play it right. They're not going to play it perfectly. And black's going to have great chances for equality or more, because some of the following lines are very interesting. There's one line in particular I want to show us. First things first. If they play knight takes pawn, probably they've misplayed it. So if you see this move, you could kind of rest assured that white hasn't played it perfectly. Like, this is a line, but I don't think it's very good. Queen e7 first is important. We need to start with this move and creating some problems on the e-file. There's nothing better than going back. Knight takes, and now queen takes pawn check. If either queen e2 or king to f1 leads to the exact same position, queen e2, we trade queens. And if king f1, which is kind of an interesting try, we're going to get the exact same position because the best move was queen c4, forking the king and knight. So we answer one check with another check, and now we reach the exact same position only the game is now one move longer, which is sort of amusing. But okay, after, let's just say queen e2, takes, and one last little detail we need to know. We have to defend c7. There's not really a good way to do it. Bishop d6 is, yuck. King d8 would just lose to now knight g5, and okay, we cannot hold together both of these pawns. We must play knight d5. And luckily, if we know about this little maneuver, black is going to be at least okay. I actually spent a little bit of time on this the other day. The majority of the lines I was looking at, black ended up with a plus, which was surprising, but not that surprising because, I mean, we do at least have the bishop pair if nothing else. If c4, chasing away our knight, well, our knight cannot move. Knight f4 is kind of misplacing the knight, and then we're still going to have to deal with the threat to this pawn. I guess we could try knight f4 check to e6, but that one is not going to be nearly as effective as simply playing the move a6. Just chase away the knight. If they take our knight, we take their knight. This is completely fine. The bishop pair is pretty okay here. And black does have a relatively nice plan of getting in an early c7 to c5 if we're able to, which we generally are. Again, this is going a little deeper than I wanted to go, but basically black is like totally fine here, completely fine, which is what leads me to conclude that this is not a good line for white. If white, going way back, plays that move, knight takes pawn, it is my belief that black will have at least equality in no matter what comes next. Black ought to be okay. Okay, so knight takes pawn. Yeah, allowing queen to e7 is that's kind of out, and if you do see it, then well, you should be quite okay here. Knight takes knight. This is a move, but it's so like uninspired. Pawn takes, then knight to here. Okay, we can't take the pawn because of problems on the e-file, so we just capture and then move this bishop somewhere. I don't know where, and we're gonna get the same weird structure where these pawns have somehow they've somehow crossed each other up through some kind of witchcraft. They got behind each other. I don't want to spend any time on this line. Black is not worse. Okay, concluding that. Now, here's where it gets interesting. White should play one of the following moves. Probably, in order to get an edge here or to try to fight for an edge, they need to just move this bishop and prevent us from taking it on, well, in the very near future. So bishop to c4 is a line, and I believe, well, here, let's get some help from the opening book. Hook us up, Stockfish. Okay, here, okay, wow, that's very interesting. Well, we could, if we wanted to kind of play boring, we could just trade g takes. Who would ever play that? Yeah, queen takes. Bishop c5. Yeah, this is at least solid. I think there is a more energetic way to handle it for black than trading the knight, which does sort of help white develop, but like queen to f3 is not that good of a developing move, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, there's this line bishop to c5, which, yeah, a little bit of foreshadowing. This is going to be coming up in another very important line we're about to look at. Knight takes pawn with some threats right here. And wow, queen to e7. Absolutely unafraid of them taking this pawn. Well, I could see if they play knight takes pawn, this will probably fail to d5. Yeah, I thought so. And white's having problems here. They could take the rook, but I think both this knight and this bishop are going to fall, and so black should pretty much always be happy there. 99% of the time, we would prefer having a bishop and a knight to a rook and like any number of pawns. Like bishop knight is going to be better than rook pawn in most positions besides like the late endgame. Bishop knight versus rook in 2 pawns is probably okay most of the time. Like again, we just get way more activity from the minor pieces. Bishop knight versus rook in 3 pawns, that one's kind of pushing it. But okay, without going without going too deep here, this looks okay for black. Interesting. Now, the line I really wanted to look at, and the reason I made this video, is after bishop to a4. Ooh, we could have so much fun here. Okay, I'm gonna leave on the engine. I'm gonna close the opening book though. Alright. Bishop to c5. Alright, the question is, will this LeeChess.org engine be able to see it? Because I tested this the other day with the chess.com engine that's just pre-built in there. It actually could not find the solution to this. So this will be a little experiment. Will LeeChess.org understand? Okay. Knight takes pawn is got to be the best try. Really quick, once again, if black wanted to be boring after bishop back, we can take the knight, and it's not like a bad line. However, we're going to have way more fun after bishop c5. If they take the pawn, we castle. And okay, yeah, knight. Here's kind of a strange looking line that has scored really well for black. Is if knight to d3, probably the only move, which we're going to find out about in a second. It pushes the bishop back, then e5 actually pushes the knight back. So white here is up a pawn, and they just made black play 2 defensive moves in a row. And yet black actually is doing pretty well here, because white seems to be a bit overextended, and they have a hard time developing their queen side because this knight blocks this pawn, blocks this bishop. And so we get good play with d6, bishop to f5. And black's actually just okay here. This one is white like playing it correctly. Now the real fun time is if instead of knight d3 right away, if they start with castling, this one is not going to be so good. Okay, the computer thinks it's a little bit good for black, but let's see. d6. Okay, and it wants to play a pretty bizarre looking b4. Maybe that's the only way to actually survive this. It probably is the only way that white survives this, is they have to play a pretty weird move, and I don't think it's going to be good. Knight to d3. Will it see it? Okay. Bishop to g4. Notice you can't play f3 because that just opens up the Satan's own double check. Yeah, it's not going to be good. Queen to e1. Okay. All right, Lee Chess, I'm giving you a minute here to find the winning move. Viewers, you also have a couple of moments here. If you find this move, you are officially better at chess than Stockfish, because black is winning here, and it is not the move bishop to b6. Not at all. Man, these engines are weak, you guys. Yeah, this is why if you're using a chess engine, you probably want to use, I guess, ChessBase or something like that, because these engines preloaded onto the websites, these are just not cutting it. All right, well, guys, black to play and win. Bam. Okay, now it sees it. Okay. This is actually doing better than the chess.com engine, which did not even understand this one. It was still saying white is better, even though white is completely lost. Kind of funny, yeah, this is reminding me of a recent, I think it was a Blitz or Rapid game. I want to say it was Vichy Anand versus Nepomniachtchi, and white won like a really, really nice, like it was a model game in the bishop d2 Grunfeld, and in like the final position where black resigned, the engine was saying black was winning, which was pretty hilarious. So yeah, there are some limitations of some of these engines. At least the ones that are just on the website. Yeah, now we see it. Takes, bishop takes. The threat is completely unstoppable. Whoa, it thinks we're surviving? H3? No, I thought this was just mate. Okay, well, I guess we survive with queen to e2, giving up the queen. Okay. If, for example, knight takes knight, the crushing move, yeah. Knight g4. There's just no way to stop queen h4. And mate. You can't do it. The game is over. The best line is, yeah, queen to e3. That's not a good move. But it's the best move. I would personally rather get checkmated than play queen e3, though. All right, so this one is just so good. Okay, we reached the final position. Let's go back. In fact, let's clear all of this stuff. Okay, it's all gone. Get ready. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. We get the 4 knights. If bishop to b5, that's one we were looking at. There's a bunch of other lines possible, but okay. Bishop to b5, knight to d4. If they take the pawn, queen e7. If they go back, then yeah, still this bishop c5. Bishop a4, this is where we were having the most amount of fun. Bishop to c5, they take the pawn, we castle. They really need to play knight d3 right away. And this one is interesting. However, if they castle first, or, you know, for example, if before taking the pawn they castle, this would be about the same position. Okay, crushing. Totally winning for black. Yeah, this point 8, that's not even true, I don't think, unless white played some bizarre move. Okay, d6. Yeah, maybe b4 and we don't die. Notice if knight f3, we are just walking into a savage pin. This is going to be so bad. After knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, bishop h3. Well, okay, you've probably seen where these ones go. It's really bad. So instead, knight d3, bishop g4 anyway, hitting the queen. The only place the queen could go is e1. And man, I literally just showed the computer the winning move here, and it already forgot. Guys, we are still superior to the machines, all right? It is not, this is not some Skynet situation. The engines are not that smart just yet. The crushing move, knight f3. There we go. Okay, now it gets it. If you show it a couple of times, Stockfish will realize that yes, this is completely winning for black. Does it? Oh my God! Minus 1.7 suggests a different move. I already told you this is winning. Now it says minus 1. Oh, actually it's minus 6. Oh my God. Okay, whatever. Black is crushing here. We are forking the king and the queen. If they take the knight, which they have to, we take back. Unstoppable threat. Knight g4, queen h4. It's going to be at least checkmate. We get a minimum of checkmate out of this position because, again, I'm evaluating like this move as worse than getting checkmated. Okay, you guys. So that line is just whole buckets of fun. An entire barrel of fun is that line. And I have got to play it in at least one Blitz game. I got that one in. Anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed my little analysis of the black side of the 4 knights. I consider that black is not really much worse in any line. But it's still something that everyone has to familiarize yourself with because at a certain level it is just so prevalent. Again, I saw it in like half of the games I observed from my kids. Anyway, you guys, this is Chess by Jason signing off. Have a good day, like, subscribe, etc. And keep on chessing.